Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Caitlin. I'm from grassfedgirl.com. I'm a holistic nutrition consultant, and today we are so excited. We have Vanessa Spina. She is known as Ketogenic Girl usually, and she is a biohacker and an author, and she is a science guru. So we are so happy to have you, Vanessa. We have had her on several times, and she's a favorite guest. So welcome back.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. It's so good to see you.
Thank you. We're both new moms, so we have that in common, and we're chatting about that before we got on. So we could probably talk about that all day. But we're going to talk about some fun stuff today, a little bit about motherhood, but we're talking about protein sparing modified fasting. Everybody wants to hear about that, and fat loss for the new year. So stay all the way to the end so you can hear all of Vanessa's tips and tricks and knowledge. So welcome, Vanessa. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I have been busy in the last year having a couple of babies. I had my baby Luca, and I also had my other baby, which is the Tone device, which is a new breath ketone meter I've been working on. So I feel like the last 12 months have just flown by with, being so busy with both of those, but it's really been such an exciting, wonderful time. Really just a fun time to be working on this project that I've had as a vision for a really long time. And I just actually rebranded everything in this week that we're speaking now to. I rebranded my Instagram to the Optimal Protein Girl from Ketogenic Girl, and I rebranded the podcast to the Optimal Protein Podcast. So there's been a lot of change, and it's the beginning of 2022. I feel like this is going to be an amazing year, and I'm really excited to make some changes and bring on some new sort of information, some new approaches to some of this information that I love talking about so much.
Is that kind of because ketogenic has a reputation of low protein?
So yeah, the main reason why I changed the names is because I feel like, just like yourself, you kind of build a community when you do podcasts, when you produce a lot of content around you. And I just felt that the name, the fast keto wasn't fully representing the community as much, because we focus so much on protein in like our Facebook group and on the podcast. I have the protein series, and that's just been growing so much. So many people have been getting so much out of the protein series and the focus on that. So I really wanted to make it more inclusive, because I do believe that, having followed the science in the last few years, that there are many paths to optimal health, but I do think that they all center on having an optimal protein intake. And it doesn't matter if someone is paleo or vegetarian or keto, carnivore, high carb, or if they're an athlete or low carb. There's so many different approaches, but the fundamental piece really is the protein piece. And just as you said, unfortunately, there are a lot of bad facts out there about keto. So when I think of keto, and probably when you do, you think nutrient dense, whole, real food. But when most people think of keto outside of our little bubble, they think, maybe, really restrictive, maybe dangerous, like ketoacidosis, like who knows what, people think of it outside of that. But it's limiting the message of, real food, optimal protein, I think, away from people who might benefit from learning about the benefits of really getting enough protein in. And so, my vision is just to be able to really help people improve their metabolic health, their body composition. And I think it just needed to grow and sort of evolve to the point where it's just more inclusive of more lifestyle approaches. And, we can all kind of relate on that one point, which is how important protein is.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine how a vegetarian would get optimal protein, but otherwise
do it though. They can. And that's one of the reasons why I want to help educate people, because when I was vegetarian, if I knew what I know now about properly combining plant proteins and certain combinations of amino acids, and doing what I know now with egg protein, like I could have been a lot healthier when I was making
Yeah.
those choices.
Well, the
So
best, yeah, the healthiest you can be without meat would help. Yeah. And now I mean, I'm not, I know we both kind of agree on fasting, that just fasting alone with water or um, coffee or whatever is just not, is not good, or not, you know, you can lose too much of your muscle mass, and it's not beneficial for weight loss over the long term. Maybe you see some big sparkles and lights and flashes at the beginning, but and you know, I think we'll probably get some kind of dopamine release from that. And then these type A people feel that and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm, you know, you can like hallucinate when you're fasting. I mean, it's, you know, if there's a religious aspect, a spiritual aspect of fasting, of course, in almost every religion. And
mhm.
anyway, but but I think we agreed that over time it's not going to be sustainable, and it's not going to, you're going to end up kind of like skinny fat maybe, or what do you think about that?
Yes, I think that in most cases, when people do water fasting or strict fasting, as you put it, for the purpose of fat loss, ultimately it's not going to be something sustainable. And like you said at the beginning, you can see, you know, a big drop on the scale, and you can kind of get, if you pass, you know, if you go past like 3 days, you can get, you know, like this euphoric feeling, and that's all great and everything to maybe do once a year. But if you're doing that consistently, you know, week after week or month after month, you know, you are really draining your willpower for one thing, which means that you're going to at some point overeat or overcompensate. And you may just end up putting in all of this effort into doing this super restrictive approach. And then you just blow all of the results that you've gotten because you then overcompensate. My main issue with it is that I do think there is lean mass lost, and that is in knowing what I do about protein and amino acids and protein turnover. And we have 9 essential amino acids, and those essentials we cannot make ourselves because we've lost the enzymes over time. And once we have those 9 essential amino acids from outside sources, we can make all 20 of them. But we don't have those 9 essential ones. Our bodies have to get them from somewhere. And, you know, they're going to have to take them from lean mass, from skeletal muscle. They're going to have to take them from somewhere if there's none coming in. So that's why I love the approach of the protein sparing modified fast. It was originally invented at Harvard. It was extremely effective in the clinics that they did there, that people lost an average of 40 to 50 pounds doing it. And it is something that you can maintain afterwards because you haven't lost all the lean mass, and your metabolic rate is not going to take a hit, and it doesn't take all the willpower. That's one of the amazing things about it, is if you're doing protein sparing modified fast, you actually don't feel hungry. Most people don't feel hungry, and that's one of the main battles when you're, you know, experiencing weight loss, is feeling hunger and dealing with that. So, you know, it's very much research backed. And one of the main things I think people are missing when it comes to protein sparing modified fast is that when you get enough protein to initiate something called muscle protein synthesis, you get, say, about 30 grams of protein has, if it's a whey protein or protein isolate or protein powder, it's going to have about 3 grams of leucine in 30 grams. You're going to initiate this process called muscle protein synthesis, and this is very energetically demanding. And so people actually will burn more fat if they eat more protein than if they ate nothing at all. So if you have the choice, ultimately, would you
Yeah.
rather eat nothing or eat protein and burn more fat? You know, that's something that's much more sustainable. And it's very much, you know, research backed. And I think for people who, it's usually recommended traditionally to bariatric patients who need to lose a lot of weight before surgery. But it is extremely effective for people to add in 2 to 3 days a week where they do this approach. And it's about 650 to 800 calories of just lean protein. And
I have a question. Why would
sure.
you, if it's, I mean, if it's also good, why would you need to limit your protein? And could you just do it without really counting? Because I feel like for me or for somebody who's done a lot of dieting, any kind of counting can be triggering. I could see just saying, okay, well, I'm going to eat chicken breasts and egg whites today and, bone broth or something. And then be like, okay, that's all I'm going to have, but I'm not going to count it, because when I count it, it's like I get all like spun out.
I definitely think that you can do that approach. I think if we just talk about the technical definition of protein sparing modified fast, it is 650 to 800 calories. But I think that an amazing approach would be just eating lean protein. The limit with the calories there is because if you are eating animal proteins, unless you're only eating protein powder, you're going to have fat coming with it for the most part. And so if someone is eating unlimited amount of just meat and they really want to lose fat quickly, which a protein sparing modified fast does, then they may end up eating more fat than they realize. If you're just eating lean proteins, like we're talking chicken breast, tenderloin, steak, most fish, if you're just eating those real lean proteins, egg whites, protein powder in a protein shake, then you are probably not going to have a lot of fat in that. And that would be, I think, an awesome approach for someone who doesn't want to calorie count. And ultimately, I would say that most people who try to do this, even if their goal is just eating lean protein, they probably will not end up much higher than that in calories, because protein is so incredibly satiating, because the body will tell you to eat until it gets its essential amino acid needs met. And so once you meet that, it is so hard to overeat. I mean, every day it still astonishes me that because I eat such high protein amounts, that I leave sometimes half my plate. Like I take a picture of it sometimes because I'm still in shock, because my entire life I was always eating my plate, and then I was, cruising over to Pete's plate to see what he had left, or eyeing the potatoes on his plate or something. So every time I finish a meat plate and I still have food on it, I'm like, well, I'll just wrap this up for a snack later. But it still blows me away that, protein really is so satiating.
So are you doing that a couple days a week, like eating only lean stuff?
I'm mostly keeping my calories pretty high because I'm still breastfeeding and my supply has been abundant. It's been really good. I've been really blessed with that. But I've also been eating a super nutrient dense diet, from the beginning, from, even before getting pregnant, throughout the pregnancy and throughout breastfeeding. So I'm not at a point where I want to start really cutting calories, but I have been bumping up the protein percentage more. And like you, I'm not really tracking the calories. I just know that I'm eating more protein and that there are days that are higher protein. And I just find that I've actually been adding in more meals. So I've been adding in a third meal. So like probably the last time we talked, and for many years, I've just done 2 meals a day. And I've now added in a third one, which is a protein shake in the afternoon, so that I can trigger muscle protein synthesis 3 times. Because if someone is going by like how much protein they eat in a day, and they eat say 1 meal a day, or maybe 2 meals a day, the protein is not going to be as effective as if it is separated into 3 or 4 meals. Because once you trigger muscle protein synthesis, any more protein that you eat over that, it doesn't trigger it more. So it's better to space out the meals. So I've actually been eating more than I was before and doing 3 meals. If I could, I would do a 4th, honestly, but I can't.
You're too full.
Yeah.
So how many grams of protein would you usually hit?
It depends on the day. I would say that like I range somewhere between 140 to 180 grams, somewhere in there. And, I've been adding in this third meal from what I used to do, which now it's usually either a protein shake with 30 grams of protein in it. I really like egg white protein and I make a protein shake with that. Or I have yogurt, which is like a low fat, higher protein yogurt. And I have some protein sparing bread with it, Maria's protein bread with it. And it's like I put cinnamon in it, and it kind of tastes like French toast. But just adding in yogurt for a third meal and adding in the protein shake, I think has added about 20 to 30 more grams of protein per day. So I'm eating more than before, and I'm losing weight pretty steadily. And I think mostly coming from breastfeeding, and I'm really active. I just like don't have as much time as I used to. So throughout the day, I can get up like 10,000 steps just being even in our home. Just walking around the house in our place is not massive. It's just, you know, like when you have a baby, you carrying this 20-pound weight around with you everywhere. In terms of exercise, we go for walks a lot, but I'm not really doing a ton outside of like a 20-minute workout here and there when I can get some weightlifting in. But, breastfeeding is very energy intensive, and taking care of a baby is too. So it's been helping me with that.
Haven't noticed. Yeah. I mean, we do lots of walking every day, and we will play outside a ton. So,
Yeah, that's
um,
awesome.
well, tell us about this tone device. What is different about it than other things that have been on the market before, and what made you want to make it?
Sure. So this is the tone right here. I have one for anyone who is watching on video. You can see it like fits in the palm of your hand. So it's really nice and portable. And the reason I wanted to create this, the main reason is because I just didn't see anything else like this on the market that was accessible for people. You know, there's a few different breath meters out there. They tend to be clinical grade, and so they're designed to be used in a clinical setting. And for that reason, you know, they're extremely sophisticated. They are, you know, $300, $400, $500, $600, which is, it's an investment in your health. And I think that over time, if you're using it for 10, 20, 30 years, you know, it can pay off. But I wanted to create something that was a little bit more simple, portable. I love the technology of measuring breath acetone, and it's non-invasive, so you don't have to puncture your skin. You can take it anywhere you go. So I don't know if anyone's testing their blood glucose or blood ketones regularly, that you can't just do it like in a restaurant or in a public place. You kind of have to isolate yourself or maybe go to the restroom to do it. Whereas this, you can just take it wherever you go. There's an unlimited amount of times that you can test. And, the testing strips are also cost prohibitive because they are expensive. So that's always been something that, I wanted to make more accessible. And I'm just very passionate about data and feedback, because I think that it can really, it can be this great way to sort of make little tweaks and adjustments to your behavior based on the feedback. So one of the things that also got me very excited about this is that I started reading research about breath acetone. So when we burn fat, our bodies, typically most people think of ketones as having to do just with keto and ketosis. And so that's, one thing, and it's great to be able to measure ketones for ketosis, but there is research showing that when people are in any kind of caloric deficit, that there is measurable acetone on the breath. And so if you are burning your own body fat for fuel, you will have measurable levels of acetone on the breast. So this one is very sensitive to low levels as well. So when you test, you can get an idea of when you're in the fat burning zone. It's got a few different zones on it. So it'll tell you if there's no ketones, no acetone on your breath, if you're in a light fat burning, or if you are in the deeper fat burning zone. And it's really neat because it is very sensitive, and you can kind of see. So my husband and I test him also because, he has kind of a different dietary approach to me, and the body is very, very consistent. So he always gets a 4, which is equivalent to about 0.4 millimolar, like no matter what. I think the highest number he ever got was a 7, and we were like, whoa. But he is like low carb, but he's definitely not keto, but he always gets this 4 number. And for myself, I tend to range between 15 and 25, which is like 1.5 to 2.5. And I am doing
You basically just move the decimal point over?
Yes, but I don't, it cannot be equated exactly because it's a different form of ketone. So, when you measure blood, it's BHB or beta hydroxybutyrate, which is more of a storage form that then spontaneously converts into acetoacetate or acetone. So it's a different form of the ketone. So you can't equate it one to one, but it is similar to moving that decimal point. So I created KET units, which are their own unit, because I don't want people to equate it exactly. And when you test with the blood, sometimes it'll be exactly like, there was one day I had really high ketones because I was up all night. And I had 5.6 millimolar, which is really, really high blood. And the breath was 56. It was like exactly the same. But then, later in the day, the blood was like back to normal, like 1 point something, and the breath was still like 40 something. So it's really interesting how there's also this like lag between them, but it gives you feedback as far as if you are fat burning. And I think that it's really helpful for people to also give them some insight into when they are burning fat, because a lot of times when people lose weight, sometimes they think they're losing weight, as we know, but it's actually water, or in other cases, it's muscle that's being wasted. And so you want to always be burning fat if you are dieting or in a caloric deficit. So that's another reason why I wanted to create it.
So yeah, well, that's good so it's also, like you said, more inclusive. You can let people who can get something off the meter about their progress without being keto. So that's good. Because not everyone wants to do that. I don't know why, but
Right. Yeah. And if someone is doing, a high carb diet, typically they probably won't see that much in terms of the ketones. But if they're in a caloric deficit, they probably will have some acetone on their breath, and they'll be able to measure, those low levels. So it is, yeah, not limited to the keto diet, but definitely if someone is doing keto, low carb, keto, carnivore, they're going to see way higher numbers because you are, fat adapted, you're burning fat all the time. So you're going to see a lot higher numbers.
you're probably less hungry.
Right.
No, I lost 90 pounds on a low fat diet. And of course, I was always hungry. But isn't there we're both into Weston A. Price and stuff, but they seem to focus on this vitamin A deficiency that can happen from a low fat diet. How does that come into play with the protein sparing modified fasting?
Yeah. So, with the traditional standard definition that we talked about of that 650 to 800 calories, about 30 grams of fat is in there. And I think that if you are eating really nutrient dense foods, you are naturally going to be eating whole foods. You're eating really high vitamin A foods like egg yolks, beef. A lot of these foods have vitamin A in them, and they're high in these fat soluble vitamins. So, I think that's also why it's important to maybe just add it in 2 to 3 times a week. That's something I learned from Maria and Craig Emmerich, that they recommended, do it 2 to 3 days a week. People have different approaches. I've talked to some people who do like consecutive days in a row. Some people who do it just, once or twice a week. So, it's not sort of an everyday thing necessarily, where you may get low on fat, or like you said, on your fat soluble vitamins. But I've also interviewed experts like Dr. Don Layman, who's one of the world's experts on amino acids. And when it comes to precise numbers, he says that the requirement that we have for essential fatty acids is extremely low. It's like 3 milligrams or something. So he believes that, we really don't need that much fat in our diet, especially if we have fat on the body. So
It's probably, the biggest problem is not the lack of fat, it's the lack of proper fats. And that's probably why people have such bad ratios and all that. So if we're taking those vegetable oils out and replacing them with fats from eggs or beef or fish, then we're way ahead of the game. So that's
Oh yeah.
probably, I mean, I haven't had somebody exactly say that, heard somebody say exactly that, but that's probably part of the problem.
I absolutely think it is. And it just comes down to what are you mostly eating when you are, doing a lower fat approach, what kinds of foods. And if it's mostly eggs, beef, and, salmon, I think you're going to be doing, really well.
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing a low fat diet, I ate very lean meats. So I felt like already, I mean, I felt like I was doing hearing about a protein sparing modified fast. I feel like because I was doing Weight Watchers, and on Weight Watchers, everything was back then, especially, was very lean. And so I was eating tons of egg whites, and then I was using, of course, like spray butters and fake, fats. And I think I made myself very sick. So I would just be afraid of anyone doing something to where they would run into thyroid problems or nutrient deficiencies. So, but I think, and of course, there's a psychological aspect, if you don't think, if you're, and even with carnivore, I mean, if it's all too triggering for you, maybe it's not the right thing for you. You like, don't block out the psychological impact that it might have for you. So like, you can try it, but if it's too like upsetting, then maybe it's not the right time or the right thing. What do you think?
Honestly, I think that the protein sparing modified fast, I'm an advocate of it because I see a lot of people doing total fasting for fat loss. And so, for me, I compare it with that. And it really is a dominant option when you compare the two in every way. It's going to maintain your lean mass. Most people don't feel hungry when they're on it. And so it's something that you can do and use as a tool to get to your goal, fat loss goal. And then once you're at your goal, then you don't really need it anymore. You try to go back to just doing like keto or carnivore every day and bringing in the fats because you need to get energy in from somewhere. But, I look at it like if you have a spending problem and, you overspent, and now, you owe like, say, $10,000 or something and you're in debt. The way to correct that is to stop spending and to save. And it's the same thing, I think, with dieting is that, if someone is in a situation where they find that they don't like the way that they feel in their bodies or they don't like the way that they look because they've accumulated over time from overeating, too much energy on their bodies, then, you go on a budget. It's the same thing. And it's not fun. No one likes going on a budget. No one likes to stop spending money and just save. But it's very effective, so, once you get to your goal, then you can change things up. So I think it's just a great temporary tool. And, I think that one of the reasons that, so these two men at Harvard originally tried it out with these patients who saw incredible weight loss. They felt great when they were on it. It wasn't psychologically difficult for them. It was, it's psychologically difficult, then you really shouldn't be doing it, like you said. But, if you're doing it and you feel great on it, to me, psychologically difficult would be like not eating every day for days and days and days, which a lot of people are doing right now. And that freaks me out. So, it's a great tool that, these two men originally used with all of these people successfully. And then, once they were done, it's a really interesting story because they found that the only thing that these patients could do once they were done losing these like 40, 50 pounds was to go on keto. But at the time, they believed that keto was terrible for you. So they actually quit their jobs completely, left the whole industry that they were in because they didn't think it was ethical to recommend keto to people. So, you know, if only they knew that you could do keto in such a healthy, sustainable way, or carnivore, or whichever approach, to maintain your results. But it's just, you know, I think one of those things that if someone really is after results and, you know, wants to see change and, you know, wants to do something that is going to maintain their lean mass, burn a lot of fat, it's going to be very effective.
I think, I don't know. I've never done it, but I think, who knows, maybe after I stop breastfeeding. But I definitely have done a low fat diet and I know how that is. So, um, well, so tell us a little bit more about.
Ask one quick question. When you did the low fat diet, how do you know how much protein you were eating?
No, I mean, because that wasn't, I just counted my points, so, but I know that I was eating a lot of protein because I've had figured out that that was the only way I could make it through the day. So I would eat, I would prioritize eating, egg whites or chicken breast or chicken. I mean, I figured out like chicken legs didn't have that much fat in them. So you could eat like 2 or 3 or something. And I mean, sure, it wasn't as much, nothing like I eat now, but of course I eat a lot of fat. But I had figured out at least that I had to eat some protein like at first part of the meal, or else I just wouldn't make it to the next meal. But I was still, I was eating some beans and stuff too. I mean, or
Yeah.
tofu, or like, I know what I ate a lot was those those soybean burgers, because they were very, very, you could eat a big one and it was only like 1 point or something. So it was,
Yeah. The whole idea of doing like points or like having a, this like daily amount, I think that can be psychologically difficult. But, if you're eating really like higher levels of protein, I wonder if like how much protein it was in a day. Because as you know, like if you eat a lot of it, you just get so full that you just don't think about food. You just don't think about it. So yeah, I'd be
well,
curious.
that's how that's what I've experienced on the carnivore diet, which I'd never experienced on keto, because I was always starving when I was on keto. On the carnivore, I'm just like in total zen. I can just eat my meats. And then the most success I had recently since having my baby was doing all beef. And I think some of the things that you talk about all the time come into play with that, because I even did periods where I added nothing, like no fat. So I think I was eating fatty meats though, but I wasn't adding any butter or anything. Like I just did only meat. And so I had to just whatever I could find that was just beef. So I mean, I was eating hamburger and whatever, but sometimes it was leaner and sometimes it was fatter. But I did see a lot of reduction of weight when I was doing that. My only issue with it was, I mean, I do think, of course, I have food sensitivities and all that. So, and my body just loves that all beef thing, but because there was no eggs, no chicken, nothing. But the only thing was, it was hard to exist like in the world, because like if you're out away from home, there's not always a good beef option. Like maybe you go to fast food, but they're not serving hamburgers yet, because it's
Yeah.
9 o'clock in the morning or something like that, or you're traveling. So not having the eggs and not having like, I couldn't eat chicken wings if I was at a party, it's like, it was almost too limiting. So this month I'm trying just all protein and not adding fat.
Yeah.
So I want to try that. So maybe, if there is chicken wings, I don't have to say no, or if there's shrimp, I can have that, or if there's fish, I can have that. But because I just feel like the more options you have, the better for sticking with something like that. But and I know you talk about this all the time, doing the butter coffee and all that, it can get really out of control. So so I'm doing just black coffee and
Yeah.
all protein and trying not to add any fat to it, and just see how that goes. Not doing lean meats, but just do the meat in however it's it comes, you know.
That's honestly how I eat. Like I just don't add all the extra fats because I personally don't like eating that way. Like I kind of figured out for a while that I just don't enjoy eating a lot of, like I don't enjoy fat on its own or a lot of extra fat.
Um,
When I
I do.
started just having the meat like as it is and realizing that, you know, there is fat in the meat and I don't need to add it all the time, I really started seeing a lot of progress. Like I think you're probably going to be really happy with your results from doing that.
I had really good results last year. I did 2 months of all beef, not consecutively, but I did August and October, and it was really, really working well, and I wasn't freaking out or anything. And um, but then over Christmas, I just like, oh, we all got COVID, and Christmas very emotional time with everything. So I was eating a little more like keto treats and cheese. Cheese is the big thing for me. It's like I can't stop once I start eating cheese. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if it's goat cheese or regular cheese, all the cheese. I love all the cheese.
Oh yeah, same.
And the anything like anything dairy, cream, all that stuff. I love it. So I had that over Christmas because we were kind of like, it was like we were snowed in sort of, because we had COVID. I was like, we can't go anywhere. We can't talk to anyone. It was all my mom and my husband and me and the baby. Um, so it was kind of like, let's just eat cheese. And then,
Yeah, totally.
so now we're back on track. I'm back on track. So I'm feeling much better. And
Awesome.
so it's a good time to be talking to you.
Yeah, you look great. I definitely see difference.
Thank you. Yeah, I got really close to like my goal before of getting to the weight I was before, which I was pretty happy there. And but I'm just like, whatever. I'm just gonna, I don't care because there's nights where I'm up all night and my baby is like you said, my baby and breastfeeding is my priority. And when we stop that, maybe we'll have more of an even lifestyle, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
So do people ask you all the time, what are you going to feed your baby? And they always say, is breastfeeding hard on keto? And then
Yes.
they also ask about how can you feed your baby, or is your baby going to be keto? What about all that?
I get the question, are you breastfeeding on keto maybe once a day? Sometimes twice a day. It's amazing. So I almost have like a couple of like stories saved just on that topic because I don't really understand why there is a notion that doing keto when breastfeeding would not be healthy. But again, it goes back to that idea that we were talking about at the beginning, where you and I think of keto as nutrient dense, beef, eggs, liver, like salmon, all these amazing nutrient dense foods. And I think when a lot of people think of keto, they think of like, who knows, keto, like, powders or like
Bars
mixes and bars and like, this really restrictive thing with no carbs. So I do have some carbs. I do have berries in my protein shake. And, that's something that I added back in just in the last few weeks because I was, I'm adding in more this third meal. But, if you're getting enough protein, that's what we essentially need, is those essential amino acids. And then in terms of energy, carbohydrates and fat, they're both delivering the same thing. They're both delivering carbon. So, keto, you're just getting most of your carbons from hydrocarbons or lipids or fats. And if you're doing high carb, you're getting most of your carbons from carbohydrates or, carbs. So, I think there's just really like so much bad information out there about, keto and about energy and protein, macronutrients, and how it all works that people find it concerning. But I have had, Luke has been exclusively breastfed. I've had abundant supply since he was born. And, I do pretty much like closer to carnivore, maybe plus like berries now, so.
That's still carnivore according to Paul Saladino. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that, if you are predominantly like 90+% of what you eat is just animal foods, that's pretty much, carnivore for most people. And then there's people who do more strict, versions and less, but, I find that it's been amazing for me personally. I think there's so much about breastfeeding that we don't understand. Like, I have girlfriends who eat really, really well, like eat protein all the time. They eat carbs, they eat some fats. They eat like sort of a balanced diet, or what you would call it, who cannot breastfeed. Like, I have a couple of girlfriends like that. I don't know why. What's going on there? I wish I knew. There are things that we just don't understand fully about, some of the mechanisms. We understand prolactin's a hormone, we understand, oxytocin, but, I don't think it necessarily comes down to, if you're like doing high carb or low carb or not. And I see the same thing in some of the Facebook groups, that I'm not sure, you're in a lot of those groups where like carnivore motherhood, that kind of thing. Some people are doing amazing and some are not. So I wish I understood more what was going on there, because, it's painful to see your friends want to breastfeed and not be able to. And, looking at your diet, you're like, well, you're eating like a balanced diet. So why, what's going on there? I wish I could understand that, but I think if you're eating a nutrient dense, keto diet or carnivore diet, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to breastfeed. And for me, it's been great the entire time. He's been exclusively breastfed. He's in the 97th percentile, and I haven't had, any issues with that. Sometimes I see things in the groups where people will say, like, if they change their diet, they'll notice a change in supply that's temporary or like, transient. But yeah, I wish I understood more what was going on with that.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's so much we don't know, but I do think for both of us, we took the prenatal nutrition very seriously. So we got as our stores up of nutrients as much as we could, because we planned, to have a baby first, hopefully for some time. And then also afterwards, same thing, just kept doing it, eating the same way. And the electrolytes, I feel like also some people are so dehydrated. I feel like that could be a big thing, maybe.
Yes.
With anyone, not dependent on keto, but even more so if you're keto, but people don't take electrolytes seriously. So that could be something that somebody could add in easily. And we got to go in a second, but tell people how they can find all of your newly branded podcast and how they can get their Tone device.
Thank you so much. So the podcast is called the Optimal Protein Podcast. And my Instagram is Optimal Protein Girl. Now, it was Ketogenic Girl before. And you can find all of my programs and meal plans still at ketogenicgirl.com. And the Tone device is also available there. And it's also at tonedevice.com. And yeah, I would love to hear from anyone if they have questions about it, if you want to find out more, learn more. I just launched it and we are shipping them out this month. So I'm really, really excited. I'm going to be sending one to you. I have your address, so I can't wait to hear what you think of it.
I'm so excited. I want to try it. I like to test my ketones and stuff. So I'll definitely make some stories and show everyone what I think about it. Well, thank you guys. Please like, share, subscribe, ring the notification bell. We really appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.